Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and I'm so excited today to be talking about the wonderful final season of the HBO series Barry. We are joined by creator, executive producer, actor, and director Bill Hader, as well as cast members Sarah Goldberg, Stephen Root, Anthony Carrigan, Robert Wisdom, and the wonderful Henry Winkler. And Bill, in starting with you, I wanted to talk a little bit about Barry's relationship with himself in this season, because it's such a fascinating space to watch him in a place where everybody around him now knows about his past and who he really is. And we've obviously watched him through the last few seasons go through a lot of inner turmoil in trying to escape who he's always been, but you can never completely become a new person. So he's always existed in this push and pull in kind of a space in the middle of who he's been and who he wants to be. And so I was really interested in how you viewed and found his relationship in terms of that inner turmoil for this season, with the fact that everything's come to light.
Yeah, I mean that was we kind of have a thing where we like to write ourselves into a corner and then go, okay, he's in prison, but we don't really know what's going to happen. But I mean, it was kind of a thing where, yeah, the cat's out of the bag, and I think the bigger thing in that first episode is that the two kind of guiding forces for him for the whole season is Sally and Jean, and they both basically tell him to go fuck himself, rightfully so, so he has he's at a loss and he has no choice but to apologize to Fuchs. and he kind of goes back to this where he was at the beginning of the show, really. And, he does what he does best. He feels sorry for himself. So, but he's kind of a caged animal, he kind of doesn't, he finally kind of admits in that first episode, which was interesting, I'm a killer. But Barry's not a very deep thinker, so it doesn't take very long for him to kind of forget that he just said that and move on to something else. So that's interesting, but I think what the interesting thing about this season in general is we kind of, in talking about it, saying it'd be interesting if all the characters had Barry's disease this season, which they all are dealing with. Is this my nature? And what is my nature? And can I change? And since, and the acting thing of kind of morphed into this idea of we all kind of act, we all kind of put up a character and we watch all these characters try to be something else to kind of deal with themselves, which I think is very human. Even to the point where they're wearing wigs, but so, yeah, that was the kind of starting point for the season.
And Sarah, in talking about your performance in the first few episodes, I love that we kind of meet Sally in a place where she's obviously in the middle of trying to process, all these new elements of trauma in addition to everything else that she's been carrying throughout the other seasons. Mm-hmm. And in terms of your performance, there's kind of these two juxtaposing spaces of her being incredibly insular and really closing herself off. There's moments where her mom's talking around her and she's just completely non-responsive. And then at the same time, she's also incredibly explosive at certain moments. And so I was interested in how you kind of found the calibration between those two spaces.
Happy accident. No, I think that, Sally's in this she's really freaked out. Obviously, she's been through this intense event and is forever changed by it. And I think she's going home looking for some kind of peace or solace, and which was a fool's errand. And on her way back, finding out what she finds out about Barry and that she's been lied to all these years and that he's actually, a much worse person than she thought. I think she's so thrown. So I think she's so discombobulated when we meet her, and she's searching and floundering. So I think the yo-yoing is she's trying to find some safe footing. And I think with her mother, she's not listening to her, and she's actually, it's like the most honest we really see Sally, where she's like begging for help and saying she's in actual trouble. And no one's really listening. And obviously that leads her back to the dead end from whence she came, because she needs to find safety somewhere else.
And Henry, I wanted to ask you about one scene in particular, because there's a great moment where we essentially see you performing a one-man act of everything in terms of his history with Barry to a journalist as his way of telling his story. And I thought it was such a perfect way for him to give his experience to a journalist in terms of the setup of the show, but also in terms of your performance. It's really fascinating to watch someone who, kind of like Bill was saying, is trying to project this other side of himself, but there's still all the emotion that's packed into his relationship that he's had with Barry over the past few seasons. And so I wanted to ask just about how you approached kind of finding the right tone and the right levels for a scene like that.
Well, first of all, we are all very lucky that we have an extraordinary leader. And that is the truth. Everything starts with the people at the top. Number two is the image that I have, that the metaphor that I've come up with is Gene is a beetle that skates on the top of water. And I'm at the bottom of a well, and I sprout wings and I fly to the top and I sit on the stone on top of the well. And then, of course, my nature can't help itself. My wing breaks and I fall back into the water. And I have not figured out yet whether I drown or not.
Oh, there.
I think it says everything about Henry's character when he says, I don't like the spotlight, and he's standing in a spotlight.
That kind of, you're right. That was him saying, I'm only gonna tell my story once to you, Vanity Fair.
Yeah.
On a stage, literally in a spotlight. That kind of, you're right, Stephen. That is kind of
it's the only way I know how.
I love it. And Stephen, in talking about Fuchs, one of the things that's really fun to always watch in his journey is that there's always so many cyclical elements to him. There's so many times where he's just repeating patterns and behavior. And, no matter how much he tries to escape this grasp of this very complex relationship he has with Barry, he's always magnetized and completely drawn back. And so I was interested in kind of stepping into this season and looking at a lot of his arc as a character, how you found the spaces where you felt like he would be creating new ground for himself as a character, and where you felt like that cyclical element of him would still always kick in to some degree.
Well, I thought it was really interesting that we revealed in this season that how long he had known Barry. We knew before that he had picked him up from the Army after he was done, but we didn't know that he was playing Army with him when he was 7 years old. So they've known each other for a long, long time, and that's the first time the audience gets a glimpse of that. So they've had a love relationship all the way up through the place where Fuchs feels like, I've got the perfect job for you. We're going to be doing this for the rest of our lives. And then he wants to do something else. And Fuchs can't understand that. He doesn't get it. And he's broken to the point of a revenge cycle. So I just thought it was really interesting that you found out how early on he knew Barry.
Absolutely. And Anthony, in talking a little bit about some of the physicality of your performance, I was interested in how, when you first kind of took on the role, you found a lot of the body language and mannerisms for NoHo Hank, because he's so broad and he's so, he makes so many gestures. And so there's a very specific kind of fluid body language to how expressive he is. And so I was really fascinated in how you found that.
I'm a ham. I act with my hands.
The cap on.
I'm only bacon, yes.
Well, I don't know. I think the physicality was something that really kind of helped me early on to find this character, and like putting his hands on his hips and being like very kind of very expressive in certain ways, and that was kind of the gateway into finding him. But I don't know. It's been really kind of it's been fun to, over the course of the seasons, find all these other levels as well, right? Starting off with Hank as a kind of very silly, over the top character, but then progressively there's been kind of all these little nuances that have shown up, and you kind of find real pathos with this really like ridiculous character. That's, you know, just all of it has been really rewarding and fun to play.
And Robert, on the flip side for you in playing Jim, there's such a stillness to your performance and a necessity for that with your character. And we see him in so many instances where he's very intentionally keeping himself very guarded and keeping a lot under wraps in terms of his emotions. And was that something that you had a very specific idea of in terms of your character's physicality early on?
Nah, because I overact all the time. So I needed a director who could like rein me in. And Bill was perfect for that. He knew what he wanted, and he got me there. And I mean, there's certain things that you get from Jim's story, you know, the tragedy at the heart of it. But you know, there's a lot of times that this is a very particular kind of comedy, and comedy is may not even be the right term for an American audience, because it's something of its own, one of a kind. And in it, you don't try to get ahead of it. You know, you try to just stay there. And for some actors like me, I try a lot of different things. Bill had a very clear vision of this universe, and you know, and I let myself be directed, and I think we won. You know, and it brought me to another level of my work, which is, you know, crazy to say it after 30 years, you know, but this really brought me to another level of work, and I'll miss it. I'll put it like that.
Mm-hmm. I'll also say, Robert, we got to a place where we would just start doing it in terms of numbers.
Right.
And then 10.
Right.
I think at 10, and I think there's one part of this season where you smiled.
I know, right?
I said, "Hey, you can smile," and you went, "I can smile." Like,
really?
I'm sorry. I just never want to know what Jim's thinking, and you were like, "Oh my God, I got to smile today."
That's
so
funny.
I appreciate you being patient with me.
No, man, it was great. It's great.
Speaking of directing, Bill, as well, you know, obviously, like the first season, you started out directing 3 episodes. I think you did 5 of them last season. And then in this final season, you've directed every single episode. And what I love about the visual language of the show is that every season kind of has its own sense of tone to it, while still also really connecting season through season. And so as you were mapping out a lot of the visual aesthetics and how you wanted to utilize the camera for the storylines in this season, how did you find the elements of visual language that you really wanted to carry through from previous seasons, and where you wanted to create new spaces and evolve it?
Well, I mean, I think definitely this season, you know, he was in prison, and this idea of kind of landscapes and, you know, freedom, and I don't know, you know, when you start talking about it, you sound like an asshole. So it's kind of like, it's just like, I don't know, it's like, I don't know. It's kind of an intuitive thing. You start doing it, and then I work with amazing DP Carl Hersey and Eric Schoonover, the production designer, and then our editors Ali Greer and Frankie Gutman and Laura Hill, our VFX people, and so it's all of us kind of talking about a feel, you know, and me saying, you know, I think the feeling is this, and then we, you know, and I write a thing, and then we try it, and then sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I definitely feel there's a weird feeling of people being enclosed in spaces. And, you know, if someone's sitting, we try to put them in a corner. There's no back, you know, that doesn't feel like they can escape, you know. Mm-hmm. You know,
my favorite is the FBI interrogation booth set, where it's like that tight. It's so claustrophobic. It's so funny.
Yeah, and that's an actual room. Believe it or not, the editors went, "Wow, you went a little overboard." But I go, "That's a room."
Oh, I thought that was that.
but that we built the set based on an actual room. But I asked the guy, I go, "Why is it like this?" And he said, "Well, you know, you want to freak people out when you bring them in here."
Works.
It works, but yeah, that is interesting. And the idea of darkness, people coming in and out of darkness, which has been associated in other seasons, but I don't know, it's all very intuitive, and you try to tell the story and you try to figure it out, however it works.
I love that, and for the rest of you, I was interested in how certain visual choices can sometimes really enhance the work that you're doing in your performances. For example, Sarah, I know you've talked a little bit about how you really love the opportunity to do these one-shot takes sometimes with Sally's monologues. And as the show's progressed, there have been more and more of those, and it kind of leans into your background in theater. And so kind of off the back of that, for all of you, what have been some of the visual choices of the show that have actually really benefited you as performers?
Well, I'm sorry.
No, you go.
No, I was going to say that was the great thing for me as an actor, is to do, like you say, the longer monologue things in just a take, or maybe in 2 takes. So it felt very much like a theater process. And Bill would be specific in his instructions about, you do one that was a gut take, and then you would get directed by Bill to be very specific about what parts of what he wanted, and that felt like theater to me. And it was fun to be able to work that way, because I had long monologues in almost all the seasons, and I like the fact that we didn't beat him over the head. We just we did a couple of long takes, and that was it. Right, Bill?
Yeah, I don't like to do a lot of takes.
Yeah.
I feel like it wears people out.
Yeah.
And also, we all want to go home. So it's like, you try to go in as prepared as you can. And we actually has a nice rehearsing process, which we kind of figured out as the show went on. So like season 3 and 4, instead of doing a table read, we would sit around a table and kind of talk out the scenes and see what was feeling right and not feeling right. And a lot of times you get there and then another thing comes up, or you try another thing, but these actors I just know as an actor, it's hard when you do something, you work really hard on it, and then you go and you see it and it's cut up into like 80 different things, shots. And these actors are so good that when we get in the edit, I mean, it's a big thing with editors where they're like, oh, I've fallen in love with this full take. And I'm like, the whole take has to be in the show. And they're like, it's a 30-minute show. And I'm like, I don't care. We have to figure out how to keep this whole thing in, because what they're doing is just watching behavior. Sarah last season, when she did her speech at her show, the premiere of her show, it's like held on this moment of her. It's one of my favorite moments of the whole show, where she just you start making this weird noise. You're going, oh. She starts spinning out that she got 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. And yeah, mostly it was like, oh, do you want to cut this? I was like, no. Don't go.
Because we shot one with a lot more text, and then Bill had this idea where he's like, why don't you just try this, like it's a private moment that you're having in public, and hold it as long as humanly possible. But we had a room full of like 200 background artists, and they'd seen it the other way so many times. So when I did that, they obviously thought that I'd completely dried on my line. So like, no acting was required, because I felt this whole room get so awkward. It was like palpably painful. And I kept thinking Bill was going to call cut, and then he didn't call cut. So it just went on and on. And then I'm like, surely that's not going to be in the show. And then lo and behold, it was. But anyway.
He did that to you too. Because he did that to me as well.
Where I went and called cut. It's in episode 3 where you go, where you're being interrogated and you go, wow. That's really fucked up, because I didn't say cut. I was supposed to say cut after the last wow, and I didn't say cut. And you go, that's fucked up, man.
Totally. And like, in a way, it's so kind of terrifying when you enter into that space where it's like, we shouldn't be going on this long. Like, no, what am I going to do? But then, I don't know, that's where you get kind of really, really interesting stuff. So it's like, if you stay there long enough, interesting things happen.
Amazing. Well, I love everything that you've all created over 4 seasons of this show. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.